Hello, I'm Luca Coasters, and today I'll be reviewing Taron at Phantasialand as a part of my series in which I review my top 20 coasters, and Taron is 17th on that list. Taron is best known for the theming which the coaster is intricately intertwined with. The Clucom area itself is beautiful and well detailed, and Taron has a dominating presence throughout the whole area. The queue line lacks detail, but you get a great view of the coaster overhead, but most of the theming is present throughout the ride experience. For its scale, Taron is very compact. It manages to fit in 4,330 feet of track, reaching a maximum height of 98.4 feet and a top speed of 72.7 miles per hour, all while crossing over itself 116 times. The atmosphere in the Clucom area is amazing. At least one train is flying around the track at all times, which combined with the audio effects around the whole area create a very lively tone. This is heightened by the roar of the second launch, which emanates throughout the whole area every couple of minutes. Perhaps the area with the best atmosphere is the station area of Taron. It has a rustic feel and is lit up beautifully with lamps and some green lighting below the track. This is added to by the amazing music which plays throughout the whole area. In the station you can also see the amazing trains which are highly detailed. The trains on Taron are probably the best trains on any coaster. They are so comfortable and the restraints are so open. The overhead lap bars perfectly conform to the legs, making them very comfortable. And also the trains have very little lateral bracing, which allows the riders to fully enjoy all the forces thrown at them, especially the lateral forces. If there was a downside, I would say that it's hard to get room, but it doesn't matter as the restraints are so well made that you can still enjoy the airtime without any room. When the train dispatches, a blaring fanfare plays as the train slowly navigates an unbanked turn. This builds up so much suspense as to the left of you can see the turn just after the second launch, which has a waterfall roaring right beside it. The music gets louder as you approach the launch, and then you are staring down the straight launch track ahead. The music then continues to build until you are launched off at 50 miles per hour in a fairly snappy launch, especially considering it uses LSMs. While it doesn't come close to matching the strength of the hydraulic launches, this launch is hard to beat when it comes to LSMs. The train then banks to the right and ascends into the first overbank. This delivers a surprising kick of positive G-forces which really sets the tone for this coaster. The rest of the overbank lacks strong forces, but during this element there is a fun nimbus of the surrounding rockwork. The valley exiting the overbank has gentle positives which build up as you enter the first airtime hill. This hill suddenly throws you out of your seat, but is definitely not the strongest moment of airtime. It can vary from strong floater to weak ejector when this coaster is running well. The moment is great, but it's over too soon as the descent is not parabolic, so the airtime dies out fairly fast. This was a factor that disappointed me in my first rides, but soon I got used to it. While hurtling downhill, the train begins to turn, and at first the track is completely unbanked, giving a nice moment of laterals which throws you to the side. The train then flies into a tunnel, and as the train banks more, the laterals turn into positives and you are crushed into your seat in the most forceful moment of this coaster. This moment sustains some of the laterals from earlier in the turn, so you're still pushed to the right while you're being compressed by the strong positives. This out of control feeling created by the airtime laterals is heightened by the use of a tunnel which impairs your vision of the track ahead, making the coaster even more unpredictable. The train then suddenly banks to the right, giving an insanely strong punch of laterals which whips you from right to left, all while being thrown out of your seat in a brief pop of ejector. This merciless combination of forces is so aggressive, as so many contrasting forces are being thrown at you in such a short space of time. The coaster then glides through a drawn out turn which banks up against some rockwork and the roofs of the station and queue line area. This element is more tamed, only having weak G-forces, but the theming really heightens the sensation of speed. The train then gently rises and banks to the left, flying over the pathways of Clucom. Then the train flies through a building and suddenly banks to the right, giving noticeable laterals, but it definitely doesn't match the extreme lateral forces felt in the previous elements. This then leads into a descending turn which interacts with Reich, the Vekoma Jr. boomerang. And at this point in the coaster there are no extreme forces, but it's just plain fun flying through the scenery. The train then rises into a steep turn which flattens out slightly too late, giving you a kick of laterals which remind you that you're on an Intamin. While doing this, the train dives under a bridge and then ascends into a slow, drawn out turn, and at this point it is noticeable that the train is running out of speed. There is then a shallow descent which leads into some S-bends, which have subtle laterals, but it's nothing remarkable. The trains then weave through some dense rockwork and navigate a flat turn, and suddenly halfway through this turn there is a kick of laterals as the coaster begins to go down into a tunnel. This moment always caught me off guard. While the laterals aren't as strong as the insanely snappy transition before, it is considerably stronger than the previous sequence of elements. The open restraints really allow you to enjoy this moment as there's nothing to stop you from being flung to the side, but it is great how this coaster picks up the pace again with it reintroducing some strong forces. The train then flattens out in a tunnel, then it engages with the LSMs. And this second launch is so much fun. The train roars as it accelerates to a top speed of 72.7 miles per hour. While the acceleration itself is not insane, the sensation of speed in this moment is something to behold. The scenery is whizzing past you in a blur, and honestly it feels like you're going way over 70 miles per hour. The intensity of this launch is also assisted by the signature LSM rumble, which permeates throughout the whole train, but it definitely doesn't cause any discomfort. The train then banks to the left and rises up the turn, which has great positives, and if you sit on the left side of the train, you're also slapped with water from the waterfall, which is slightly painful. The positives are good, but at this point most people are still entranced by the amazing sensation of the speed as this train threads its way through the rockwork. At the top of this element, the train still carries a lot of speed, and it banks from right to left, beginning its descent, and there is actually a fun moment of fairly strong floater. The transition itself doesn't really give laterals, but as the banking is so steep in the turn after, you get laterals during that turn which throw you towards the ground. This is definitely not a conventional moment of laterals, and if anything it's more like lateral hang time as the train is so overbanked that it nudges you to the side. This element is again heightened by the open restraints, which really take these elements to another level as you can fully appreciate them. The train then banks to the left, and this transition actually has some slight laterals, while still having a nice moment of floater. This transition nudges you to the right, but then the lateral hang time creates a juxtaposition of force and then you are thrown to the left, which makes for a fairly violent moment of laterals. At this point the coaster has managed to gain some more speed, and you navigate yet another downhill transition, which this one lacks airtime, but it's made up for by the good laterals. This transition actually feels most like the first few snappy turns on Maverick, but this is definitely less intense as you're only gently pushed to the left. But at the bottom of this turn there are also good laterals and positives which have a decent kick to them. The coaster then rises up into a low to the ground overbank, which the train hauls through. While the positive forces are not the strongest, the sensation of speed is insane. This moment is very reminiscent of the low to the ground turns on Fury 325, except on this ride your lower body is less restricted and you're flying through dense rockwork. This element is one of the most fun elements ever created despite the weak forces, just because of how fast the train blitzes through the element. The next valley has some pretty strong positives which squash you into your seat, then the train rises up and suddenly whips from right to left in what is the best transition on this coaster. Not only do you get insanely strong laterals which violently throw you from left to right, but you also get a snappy pop of ejector which launches you out of your seat. This is one of the best examples of a twisted hill, as it strikes the perfect balance between laterals and airtime, which leads to one of the most aggressive elements ever created. The train then dives down into an intense turn, gliding above some rooftops which it narrowly misses, and then it descends into a tunnel. Towards the end of this turn, when the coaster is deep within the trench, the train suddenly banks to 0 degrees, which whips you to the right before banking back in the same direction. This sudden whip gives amazing laterals and it always catches me by surprise as it's so unnatural and unexpected. The following turn has strong positives and then it leads into a more gentle transition, which has neither laterals nor airtime. The train rotates from left to the right and then enters a 180 degree right hand turn, which has weak but noticeable positives. There is then another drawn out transition which provides even less force than the one before. The next helix has decent forces, but this is overshadowed by the noticeable rattle on this element. The rattle is not uncomfortable, but it is definitely annoying. However, it doesn't really harm the experience or re-rideability much. The coaster then flattens out and enters a shallow descent which is heavily trimmed. Between this moment and the following airtime hill, there are 3 trims which bring the coaster to a crawl. These trims are necessary to ensure that the final turn is not too intense, but it would be nice if they were able to find a solution so that trims were not necessary to navigate the rest of the layout. The train then enters a fairly violent floater hill. While the airtime is not the strongest, the transition into the airtime is fairly sudden, but this hill is always disappointing as it feels like it could have been so much more if the trims weren't there. In the descent following the hill, the train suddenly turns to the left, giving a nice push of laterals which throw you to the side. Then the train enters a right hand turn which throws you to the other side in the transition because of the strong laterals. You are then met with a high dose of strong sustained positives which crush you into the seat. This is very similar to the turn on Goliath, but this is even more intense. The train then whips into the brakes, giving one final but fleeting kick of laterals before a fairly sharp deceleration. Every time the train hit the brake run I was overjoyed. While I was never particularly blown away by this coaster, I always had such a blast in it because of the surprising forces and the unmatched feeling of speed. My enjoyment could have also been increased by the amazing atmosphere throughout the area, and the theming which heightens the out of control nature of this ride, while also making the slower sections more enjoyable. While I don't usually take theming into account while rating rides, it's hard not to on Taron, as it's such an integral part of the ride. I definitely say that Taron is a front row ride, not only for the best view of the theming, but also for the forces, which is surprising as I usually prefer coasters in the back row. In the front row, many of the transitions feel snappier and the positives feel slightly stronger. and that is even without the heightened sensation of speed that sitting in the front provides. The front row unfortunately always has a long line because you have to queue separately for it, but if you still want the great forces that are exacerbated in the front of the train, then the second row is a good enough supplement. Another aspect of this ride which I love is the night ride. Phantasialand has done an amazing job with lighting the whole area, with there being a great mixture of beautiful lighting and complete darkness which really adds to the experience. Furthermore, the tunnel in the second launch is filled with smoke, which adds to the intensity as it impairs your vision so that you can't see the sharp turn ahead. The whole atmosphere around the coaster is amazing at night, and it's unmatched by any other coaster, and the night ride itself is phenomenal. It's unfortunate that you can only get night rides at certain times of year, such as the Christmas event, or on pass holder ERTs at certain times throughout the year. So overall, Taron is a fantastic coaster, which despite objectively not being the best because of its weak pacing, is still so much fun, and the intensive theming makes it unique and makes it stand out among other Intamin multi-launch coasters. The ride experience is also greatly enhanced by the amazing Intamin restraints, which pushes it above other similar Intamins, namely Maverick. So keeping this in mind, I'd give Taron a final score of 92 out of 100. So comment down below your thoughts on Taron at Phantasialand, and like, comment and subscribe for more rollercoaster based content.